porn can lead to demonic possession.
Wow, I did not know that. Well, guys, I wanted to do this little episode on the Bari Weiss podcast. If you don't know who Bari Weiss is, she is...
weird.
That's not nice.
Today's episode is brought to you by The Spectator, and I'm so excited to be reading this ad because I am among The Spectator's many adoring fans. Cultural critics like Lionel Shriver and Douglas Murray and Brendan O'Neill.
I actually did a video about it on this channel because it's one of the PragerU, one of the members of the PragerU, the Prager universe. A guy who combines the worst of the British and the Americans, Douglas Murray.
Consider what the statue destroyers are in effect saying. They are saying that people in history should have known what we know. That's tantamount to saying they should have known the future. This is, of course, absurd. Yet more and more people believe it. Why? Simple. It's what they're taught. It is the fruit of an education system that long ago prioritized empathy over facts, that believes the ultimate point of history is not to learn lessons from it, but to judge it from the preordained left-wing conclusions about such ill-defined concepts as social justice, equity, and tolerance.
No! And you know he's good if he's on PragerU complaining about statues. You know that he's an honest actor. So she's like a right-winger who pretends not to be. You know, she's doing this whole kind of thing.
Weird.
She's had a very successful career. I mean, worked at one of the biggest papers in the world, the New York Times. Been on the Joe Rogan lecture series twice. I mean, that's huge. You get on the Joe Rogan show once, it basically makes your career. She's been on twice. And no hard feelings. No hard feelings. You know, she's getting hers and blah, blah, blah. So now she's doing this podcast, which she's been, and this is another thing with kind of like these right-wing social media people, is gotta pack these things with ads. She's done 12 episodes of this thing, already packed to the brim with ads. And the latest episode of this is actually kind of amazing because this episode is about casting the woman who people were calling the Central Park Karen, which is pretty mean, okay? Let's call her the person who had a meltdown, a racist meltdown in Central Park.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
The whole episode is about casting her as the real victim of that situation.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
And look, this lady, definitely the Central Park meltdown lady, definitely, she's got some problemos. She's got some problemos, okay? That's A. B, she should never, absolutely never have been living in New York City. Absolutely not. If you're kind of scared of strangers and you're on the verge of having a meltdown when you're around people you don't know, New York City might not be the place for you, okay? And, you know, she absolutely resorted to a racist framing of the situation when she had this meltdown. There's no way around this. But since Bari Weiss is catering to a right-wing audience, she has to frame this in a way that they'll like, and that's what we see here. So let's go through this and take a critical look at this
weird
podcast. Quick note here, if you're wondering why we're talking about a story from a million years ago, by the way, it was just a couple of months ago, she just uploaded this a couple days, so she's going over a territory that maybe a lot of people have moved on from, but it was so, I don't know, but there you go.
So let's go back. Let's start with how this was originally portrayed in the media and what people, I think, largely today still believe to be true about the encounter in the park.
Yeah, so in both social and legacy media, this story was an incredibly simple one.
So, yeah, right off the bat, they set this up as like, we didn't get the whole story. We didn't get the whole story. When that lady was saying, I'm going to tell the police that a black guy is trying to get me, there's more to it. There's more to it, actually. So because all of us, and myself preeminently, top of the list of this thing, is we all have just a story happens one day, and then 20 minutes later, oh, we forgot about it because there's a new one. Just to remind you what this story is a lady, the person who had the meltdown is named Amy Cooper, and the guy, a nerd, a bird watcher, a Central Park bird watcher, an eccentric dork. Sorry, but we have to fess up to these things. His name is Christian Cooper. So here we go. Now they're going to flip it. They're going to flip it and reverse it, to quote the great Missy Elliott. Missy Misdemeanor Elliott. Now they're going to flip it and show that how Amy was actually the victim. Here we go.
Christian Cooper, prior to this entire thing going viral, he wrote a detailed account of what he remembered happening on his own Facebook page, where he describes the fact that he is the person who instigated this encounter with Amy Cooper. He also includes details there that make it clear that he did, in fact, threaten her. Here's what Christian writes happened that morning. Central Park, this morning, this woman's dog is tearing through the planting in the ramble. Me. Ma'am, dogs in the ramble have to be on leash at all times. The sign is right there. Her. The dog runs are closed. He needs his exercise. Me. All you have to do is take him to the other side of the drive.
I mean, this is kind of a thing throughout this podcast. They're trying so hard to spin this in the way that their audience wants to hear, that she was actually the good guy, that he just contradicted he just contradicted himself. He's like, actually, he instigated it. I'll read you from his Twitter. Her dog was tearing ass through the part of the park that dogs aren't allowed in. He said, get that ass on a leash. She said, no, I don't want to do that. I mean, there's no way to do what they're trying to do. Her dog is tearing ass through this part of the park that they're not allowed to, and that it's marked that you're not supposed to let your dog off the leash. This bird nerd says, please get that ass on a leash. She says no. Because, again, she is who she is. As we'll see later, this is an impossible feat that they're trying to do here. She says, no, I'm not going to get my dog on a leash where he's supposed to be on a leash. Then, here we go.
Outside the ramble. Her. It's too dangerous. Me. Look, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want. But you're not going to like it. Her. What's that? Me. To the dog. Come here, puppy. Then, I pull out the dog treats I carry, just for such intransigence. I didn't even get a chance to toss any treats to the pooch before Karen scrambles to grab the dog. Now, two things immediately stick out to me about Christian Cooper's account of what happened. The first is that he acknowledges that what Amy said was in fact true, that he did threaten her. Look.
Okay, wait, let's hear this.
If you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want, but you're not going to like it. Mm-hmm. But Christian's post also includes another important bit of context. I pulled out the dog treats I carry just for such intransigence. This is significant because it tells us that this isn't the first time Christian Cooper has been involved in a conflict like this in Central Park. And as it turns out, this is not the first time his actions have caused people to find him threatening.
Yes.
Weird.
So, the funny thing, people have pointed this out on Twitter, is that this was all public knowledge. Like, Bari Weiss is like, I'm uncovering the real thing. The real stuff that the media spun. The 20 minutes that people thought this story was interesting and then immediately forgot about it and started watching H3 or whatever, went back to playing Dark Souls. We knew all this stuff. We knew that the guy carried around dog treats to try to like get dogs, if a dog's tearing ass around this, where these nerds like to stare at birds, probably in a pervert way, that they would give them dog treats to try to like get them to come over and then like leash them and to say, hey, get this ass out of here. We knew this. he said this, but now they're saying that he's being threatening because, again, let's go back over the events that even he described. Even he described that the dog is tearing ass. The guy says, hey, look at that sign. It says dogs need to keep their little asses on leashes. You can't do that here because us perverts like to stare at birds. So he's right. He's right. She says, no, I don't want to do that. I'm entitled to do whatever I want in the park, despite the rules. And then he says, okay, if you're going to do whatever you want, I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to do whatever I want, which is give your dog a treat so I could get it to calm down and grab the collar, or whatever. And Bari Weiss and the guy that she pays or whatever to do this podcast say, look how threatening this guy is. Joe Rogan, really good having this lady on your podcast twice.
No, of course. All Amy knows is what she is experiencing in that moment. But of course, like anyone else, she brings her own history into that experience. And she says that the circumstance in the ramble that day brought her back to a horrible experience that she had had in college when she was the victim of a sexual assault.
That's right. Bari Weiss is spinning a situation that they just described. That a guy said, hey, this is a part of the park that is marked that you're not allowed to leave your dog running around off the leash because it scares this wildlife that we perverts like to stare at. They said this. They said this. That she said no. I mean, look, put yourself in this position, okay? There are some people staring at wildlife, okay? Looking at these birds' tuchuses, okay? And your dog is running around going, you know how dogs do. And somebody points out, hey, this is a special area. This park is however many miles Central Park wide where you can take a dog anywhere in Central Park. Anywhere else. By the way, this is an established thing in the park. Can you please stop doing this? What would you say? What would you say? No, my dog does whatever. I mean, they're skipping past a very crucial part of this story for some reason. I mean, it might just because they want to be contrarian to a dimwit audience, We're telling the story behind the story. It could just be that they're just desperate for content, as we all are. We're just dumping out content and we have to come up with something. It could be that. I mean, it's a little coincidental that all her crap is kind of right-wingy. To have I mean, of course, obviously horrible that this poor woman went through a sexual assault. Of course, I'm not making light of that. Absolutely not. But to compare this, to work that in, something that serious, into this situation where a bird nerd, was telling her the truth, what she's not allowed to do in the park, and she was just like, go F yourself, basically, to this guy. And the guy tries to give the dog a treat to... I mean, this is classic Bari. Classic Bari.
Why? Why?
The other funny thing is they keep going over this phrase where this guy, he has like a little fanny pack where he has dog treats, because apparently this is a problem where people ignore this thing of you're not allowed to have dogs tearing ass around this part of the park. So this bird dork, remember, we're going over ancient history. A couple months ago, this thing happened. We're going over the ancient history of this story. He carries treats in his fanny pack. And after this lady says, no, I don't give a crap. I'm going to let my dog tear ass around where he's not allowed to. I'm not going to listen to you, basically. Go F yourself. The guy says, all right, fine. If you're going to do whatever you want to do, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, which is sort of, it's a catty It's a catty thing to say. It's a very catty thing to say. But they're spinning this as, look at this guy. I'm gonna have my way with whatever. That's literally how they're trying to covertly spin it that way. But then Bari Weiss's co-host accidentally like gives up the game and says it in the way that they're trying to imply. Here we go.
The thing that really leaps out is the phrase, they exchange words. Mm-hmm. Did the New York Times not know the words that had transpired between them?
They certainly did. They certainly did. And again, this is not Amy Cooper's account of what was said. This is Christian Cooper's account. His own account includes the declaration that he told her he was going to do something to her that she wouldn't like.
Mm-hmm. No, wrong.
Disgusting.
Wrong. There's a difference between if you're going to do whatever you want to do, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Doesn't mean that he's going to do something, quote, unquote, to her. Come on, Bari. Come on, Bari and the co-host. Could you imagine listening to this podcast? This is, I think since she's been on Joe Rogan's show, the Joe Rogan Experience twice, that she's going for an audience that might think that PragerU is a real university. I think that's how we could describe the audience Bari Weiss is going for.
Why?
Political views.
They certainly did. And again, this is not Amy Cooper's account of what was said. This is Christian Cooper's account. His own account includes the declaration that he told her he was going to do something to her that she wouldn't like. Mm-hmm.
So he accidentally kind of gives away, yeah, we're going to kind of cast this guy, this bird nerd, as a kind of a rapist. Whoops. Welcome to the Bari Weiss Show. I'm going to do what I want while he's taking out doggy treats in a fanny pack. Also, Bari Weiss must live in New York, right? I guarantee she lives in New York. Bari Weiss leaves out a crucial context, I would say here, is that this is New York City. People do this kind of crap if you've spent any time in New York City all the time. They are in each other's faces all the time. They are telling people to get their shit out of the way. They're telling people to get their dogs. This is part of living in New York City. To leave that out too and be like, look at this rape. This guy's being rapey. This guy's being a real rapey guy. Is also very stupid. But again, she found her angle. She found her angle and she's sticking to it, right, Bear?
Bye-bye.
I mean, just think about it for even a second. Even a second. If you get outside of this ridiculous it's funny that it's called Honestly, and she's doing like this just blatantly dishonest framing of this story. Is if you think about it for just a second, there's really only one way to calm down a dog who's tearing ass around the place. That he's not allowed to tear ass around, which is made clear in the park. Give it a treat. Give it a treat. People don't like. They even say in this story, they interview a guy who says, "Yeah, it's kind of funny. These bird watchers. It's kind of funny that these bird watchers have treats for these dogs to get the dogs to stop running around and then like hand them over to the owners." Like, this shit from Bari Weiss is so dishonest. Like, it's so dumb and dishonest, because there is a story here. There is a story which she totally, she almost gets to the real story, which is like, the real story is like, look, this lady, clearly pretty unhinged lady, look, a lady who needs help, all right? A lady who needs help, who had a meltdown and shoved that meltdown through the filter of some probably racist stereotypes and racist framing. Does she deserve to be as publicized as she was? There is your story right there. Bari Weiss can't do that. Bari Weiss can't do that. So she comes up with the stupidest, the absolute stupidest version of the story, which is the media was very misleading. This guy was actually being very rapey, telling this lady that you're not allowed to have your dog running around here. And then she tells him to go F himself. And then he says, fine, then I'll give the dog a treat. What a rapist, this guy. Unbelievable, Bear. Okay, but of course, look, there's video of this, of a lady saying, I'm going to tell the police that an African-American guy is trying to get me. That's a little bit of a tough one for Bari Weiss. But here we go.
What it doesn't address is the issue of her threat.
Right. Before calling 911, Amy utters the phrase that is probably foremost in many people's minds when they think about this. I'm going to tell them an African-American man is threatening my life.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
That's, to me, one of the things that made this story fairly untouchable. You know, I'm someone that doesn't shy away from touching a lot of third rails.
So I've heard.
But to me, the fact, first of all, of her, like, just general demeanor, like, it just seemed so hyperbolic compared to what I was seeing in the video.
Right.
But it's one thing to, when you call the police, to give a description of the person you're calling about. That is one thing. But the fact that she says to him explicitly, I'm going to call the police and tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life. It's really hard to find, like, an explanation for that.
Right.
That looks good for her.
Right. And in most people's minds, there's no justification for it. In fact, when I've talked to people...
In most people's idiots who don't know the whole story. If you're sort of a moron who doesn't know the whole story, you might think that.
About this, initially, that's kind of the first thing they say. There's no excuse for her having done this. But let's look at the ground we've covered so far, right? We've at least put into context the kind of tone of her voice in that phone call. We know now that they couldn't hear one another. And we at least know that there were other things about Christian's demeanor that day. And from his other encounters, we can infer that the possibility that he was actually yelling at her is not so far off. It's sensible to suspect that she might have been afraid. We know that Christian has acknowledged that he threatened her then. Again, sensible to think she might have been afraid.
Still haven't figured out why it's okay. We still haven't got to why it's okay that she's like, I'm going to tell the cops the black guy's trying to get me. Are we going to get to that? Let's see.
What does an afraid person do at that moment, in those very few seconds when she decides that she's going to call the police, and she says to him, I'm going to call the police and I'm going to tell them that an African-American man is threatening my life? I mean, it's hard. It's like what's literally true here is that she is encountering a man and giving a physical description of him.
Yay! She's giving a physical description. There's I don't see color. I don't see color. You know, just doing this thing with my dog, telling this guy to go F himself in a place where dogs are supposed to be unleashed. I actually was saying, when I was calling the cops on him, I was saying, I didn't even notice he's African American. That's what I was actually saying. Barry, and look, this story is obviously a stupid story. I would err on the side of, like, this lady probably needs help of some kind. You know, she needs help. She's going a little bit squirrely up there in New York City. Okay? And by the way, this woman should absolutely not be living in New York City. Worked for like an investment bank company, of course, or something like, should not be living in New York City. This is the picture of a person who should not be living in a city like this. She's a little kooky, needs some help. It's straight up. There's no way around it. She said a racist thing. Okay. Look, what if, let's think about it this way. Okay. What if one of us watching this, or the person creating it, we had a day that we just, like, weren't ourselves. Like, we had such a bad day that we were basically having an out-of-body experience, right? And then we have a meltdown, okay? Something just, this happens in New York City to a lot of people. The last domino just gets knocked over and you lose it. You lose it. You get a little
Weird.
And to just express how gone you are, you say something racist, right? Okay? No matter what you look like, who you are, what gender or whatever you are, you say something offensive, right? What you would do then is what I would do, okay? I would never do that, but what I would do is I would come out and I would say, look, I had a meltdown. I'm a kook and I went a little overboard with my kookiness, okay? What I said was wrong. I said something racist. I said something wrong because I was going a little crazy, and I'm sorry. I'm going to work to fix it. The thing about the Bari Weiss podcast is that they interview this lady, and she doubles down on everything.
I feel like it's important to give you a chance to respond to what many people really see as the embodiment of your wrongdoing here. When you were having this encounter with Christian, at some point, after asking him not to photograph you, not to videotape you or record you, you said to him, I'm going to tell them, referring to the police, that an African-American man is threatening me. Why did you say African-American man in that context?
Sure. And, I think to understand that question is to really think about this in the broader context of what had already transpired at this point. I was in a situation, I was a woman, I was alone in a park. I had been threatened multiple times at this point. My dog was trying to be lured away from me. And, to the same extent, if it had been a white man, I would have said, there's a white man threatening me. If it had been a white woman, I would have said, a white woman is threatening me. Mm-hmm. It was just a descriptive term.
She just doubles down on the whole thing. He was being attacky. He was doing everything wrong. I'm the victim. She doesn't even make mention of what she said was kind of. I would have at least been like, look, that was kind of messed up. I was trying to the guy was being a jerk to me. I felt like the guy was being mean to me, so I said something racist to try to make him feel bad. And you know what? I'm stupid sometimes. Okay, I would do something like that. None of that. She doesn't acknowledge that what she said was wrong. I mean, Bari Weiss thinks that she proved this is the mind of Bari. This podcast should be called The Mind of Bari. The mind of Bari is well, we proved it. We proved it. That guy was being clearly a rapist. But what she really proves is that this lady is so gone that she doesn't even think that she should have to really learn anything from this or grow in any way from this experience. She's just doubling right down on the whole thing. So, look, this is a horrible situation. This lady's clearly got some issues that I wish there was a way that she could get help and get these things worked on, and that she could kind of fess up to maybe they're the mistake in here. The other guy, Christian Cooper, of course, horrible situation. Just an all-around horrible situation. And then careerist media vampires like Bari Weiss swoop in to pick the carcasses. Pick the carcass of this crap. And with no remorse. So, guys, Bari Weiss, we love her. A truly
weird
character who makes us all say,
what?
And
it isn't.
And when we see her coming, what do? We lock the gates! Well, guys, I could just sit here playing sound effects all day, but I won't subject that to you. Thank you for watching the
Arun Brown.
channel, and I will talk to you a little bit. Hey everybody, and thanks so much for watching this video. Like all the other YouTube and podcast perverts, I now have a Patreon. Every week on this Patreon, I'm uploading 2
exclusive
Patreon exclusive shows. They're like real shows, more produced, more edited.
A behind the scenes show where I reveal all my secrets, and a show where we go deep on an important topic that you will want to know about. Also, you get the daily and complete live show audio-only feeds. And at the top level, for only 25 bones, you can become a producer. These people that you're seeing right here make this program possible. Without them, nothing. It goes right in the toilet, right in the trash, and we set it on fire. Ooh, these are the most beautiful people of my whole life. Look at these people. Are you kidding me? Yeah, right. Good, nice try. Good, nice try. Good, nice try. It's these people who make it work. So please, for Christ's sake, become a patron. Bye-bye. I love you.